I'm inside one of India's temples of science, the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in Mumbai. And I have with me a very special guest, Professor Mahan MJ, a mathematician of the finest order. He has received the Shanti Sarup Bhatnagar Award, which is considered the Indian version of the Nobel Prize, and most recently, the Infosys Science Award, an award worth 65 lakh rupees. But he is a practicing monk from the Ramakrishna mission, wears a saffron robe, but practices very high quality science. Dr. Mahan, what excites you most about mathematics?
So sort of uncovering geometric structures. So, all that we see around us is visual information, right? But it's too much. So you need abstractions in order to put it into forms that are communicable, abstract forms. So, so for example, when people took a shot of the Earth from space, that looks like a sphere, but a sphere is not what it is. The abstraction is called the sphere, and the Earth is something that is concrete, that's outside. Even simpler illustration in terms of numbers. So you don't see 2, 3, 1, 5 outside. You see 2 trees, 3 people, 5 insects, right? But what is common to say 2 oranges, 2 people, 2 buildings is the number 2. So the human mind has this capacity to abstract out information from what is there outside and then manipulate with them on paper in a much shorter space, the human mind. And so this capacity of the human mind to abstract and manipulate shapes is what gives rise to geometry. Manipulate numbers, formal symbols is what gives rise to algebra.
For most people, geometry means triangles, squares, circles, and everybody enjoys doing geometry as school students.
Yeah.
And then people kind of forget.
Yeah.
I believe as a child, your mother used to give you mathematical problems to solve to keep you away from creating trouble.
That's a completely false myth that somebody has created. It's not true. So, I enjoyed mathematics at school, but it has nothing to do with my mother giving mathematics problems. It's somebody who wrote some article which was a figment of her imagination. It's not true.
And how did you get excited with maths? You started off at the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, studying engineering.
That's right.
Which probably leads persons to do some mathematics, but then you joined to do special mathematics only. Why?
Yeah. So I think one of the things is that this abstraction and freedom to manipulate with them is not there in engineering. It is there in mathematics. And it's the kind of mathematics that one does in engineering is not sort of fundamental. It's sort of finding the innovation is really in finding a suitable mathematical model and applying mathematics that has already been done. Whereas in pure mathematics, we actually try to uncover the fundamental mathematical structures. So which is sort of dealing at the level of abstraction per se. And there are minds which are differently shaped, right? So, I sort of like that kind of thinking. So it's sort of, you don't have to have any props.
Tell me in layman's term, how would you explain your area of specialization, which is topology and doing the geometry of that?
Right. So it's the area that I work on. It's sort of called geometric topology. It's got an intimate interface between geometry and topology, and so the name technically is hyperbolic geometry, and I think the best way to sort of explain it is to sort of show you these trees which are there right in front of us. And so imagine, so take a creature that lives on a tree, say a squirrel or something like that.
On those trees, if you have a...
Exactly, just those trees, for instance. Yeah. And suppose there's a squirrel and it's not allowed to fly, okay? So it can only run along branches.
It's like a regular squirrel we see every day, and not the flying squirrel.
Yeah, it's a regular squirrel, and it also doesn't jump from branch to branch. Okay? So it only travels along branches.
Okay.
So more or less, I think all sane animals, when they want to go from point A to point B, they want to minimize the amount of energy they spend, so they take the shortest path.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay. So now you look at, say, a squirrel running from a point A on some branch to a point B on another branch along that tree. What is the shortest path that the squirrel can take?
So on those trees, how would a squirrel go using least amount of energy?
That's right. That's right. So this is a perfectly normal assumption, right? Yeah. So what it would do is you take a point, then it will sort of have to come down exactly to the point where that branch meets the branch it wants to go on.
Yes.
And then there might be sort of further branching. Yeah? So it sort of comes to this meeting point of these two branches, then goes up again, right? So the branch is sort of down and up. Yeah? Now suppose there's another squirrel which is there at the base of the tree. How would it reach, say, point A? It would have to come all the way up from the trunk till it first gets this meeting point, then go up to point A. Or if it wants to reach point B, it comes up from the trunk, reaches this meeting point, and then goes to point B, right? So what have we done now? We have taken three shortest paths, A, B, and the base of the trunk. And these are joined by what? This is sort of broken line like this, and this stuff goes up like this, or goes up like this. So the three shortest paths on a tree actually have these 3 points joined by what we call a tripod. Yeah? So it's got these 3 sticks all meeting at a particular point. Yeah? Two of these sticks together, any two of these sticks together forms one path of going from A to B, or A to trunk, or B to trunk. Yeah? What about triangles in Euclidean space? Are they that way? No. It's very different from the geometry of a tree. You want to go from here to, then you would take a straight line. Yeah? So if you take a small triangle, which you can see, and then sort of expanding it, it becomes fatter and fatter and fatter, right? But what happens to the triangle in the tree? So this is sort of the shortest paths are analogues of straight lines in the tree. They are shortest paths, right? So if you expand, you're still going to have something that meets at a point. 3 sticks which meet at a point. So this notion, this is technically called triangles are thin in a particular kind of space. So a space where triangles are thin is called a hyperbolic metric space. Okay. That's just a term, sort of packages all this information together. Okay, so that's one part of the story, the geometry part of the story. Yeah. So now you start looking at the tree. One thing that you notice is that the size of the trunk is larger than the size of the next branch. That in turn is larger than the size of the next branch, till finally you have very small leaves. And if you go into the leaf, you will see the same structure. There's a tendril that goes across, and then that bifurcates into very small tendrils, and those sort of intersperse all the way. Yeah? So starting from a trunk which is maybe of the order of a meter or a couple of meters, you go on to the tendrils in a leaf which are very small. Point is, this is not an accident. Suppose the tree wanted, trees are actually pretty smart creatures. So what are they wanting to do? What are they wanting to do by this kind of branching? They are wanting to absorb as much sunlight as possible through the leaves. Which means what? The receptive surface area that they have available has to be increased. Yeah? And that is done by this repeated branching. Okay? Now, the mathematical question behind this, the geometric structure behind this is, why does the branch become small? And the point is that this negatively curved geometry of the tree and the flat or Euclidean structure of the 3-dimensional space we live in, they are sort of fighting each other. Okay? So this geometry starts dividing, and then so if you have all leaves having the size of a trunk 1 meter, you are just not going to, this is a mathematical theorem, you just can't fit that into this Euclidean 3-dimensional space. They'll all just get congested. The leaves are sufficiently congested. If each of those leaves was 1 meter long, you'd just not be able to fit it into 3-dimensional space. So there's a failing of 3-dimensional Euclidean space. Okay? All right. So in order to fit this branching structure in, you have to sort of divide and become small. Now you look at the surface. of the tree. Yeah? So you have this hyperbolic stuff flaring out, dividing, and trying to sort of maximize the surface area. Then on the surface, it becomes sort of extremely wrinkled. I mean, if you, yeah, that two-dimensional surface boundary of this tree, mathematically, that has a structure which replicates itself on all scales. It's called a fractal. Okay. So the research area that I have worked on involves exactly this dichotomy between three-dimensional geometry, three-dimensional hyperbolic geometry, think of geometry of a tree, versus the fractal nature, self-replicating nature of the surface, which is the surface of the tree in this particular case. It's not something that's isolated to trees. Any place where you want to maximize surface area, this kind of phenomenon happens. One thing where it happens in the biological system is the human brain. It wants to sort of maximize interactions towards the surface. So that's why the brain is sort of extremely carunculated at the top. I mean, so you will see reptilian brains, they are much smoother. The human brain is, they want sort of many more surface neurons, and so that sort of starts dividing. So this hyperbolic geometry is there, visible in Euclidean space, and anytime you have it, its telltale signature is a fractal in one lower dimension. Okay? So my work is this sort of naive picture translated into the context of a two-dimensional sphere around a three-dimensional ball, where the three-dimensional ball is given hyperbolic geometry, and the two-dimensional sphere is given what is called a complex analytic structure.
So is there any application for that immediately?
No. No. I mean, by the kind of, see, typically pure mathematics applications, typically they filter their way through one of two areas, either theoretical physics or theoretical computer science. I'll give you an example. I mean, one of the most fundamental discoveries, I mean, this hyperbolic geometry is a very special case of what is called Riemannian geometry. So very general geometric structures in arbitrarily many dimensions, say 89. Yeah? So you're not going to be able to see that. You have to compute with that. So the person who discovered that geometry was called Bernhard Riemann, the greatest geometers, one of the greatest geometers of all times. And so this was discovered somewhere around the mid-19th century. Then that sort of was, obviously it was something that mathematicians took a lot of note of, because it was sort of unifying a lot of geometric knowledge that we had. But the first sort of major application of that in theoretical physics came in the early 20th century, and I'm pretty sure you can guess who the person was. Can you?
It must be Einstein.
Exactly. So it's Einstein's discovery of relativity, general relativity, that has as its mathematical backbone this Riemannian geometry. Slightly general version of that called Lorentzian geometry, but yeah, I mean, essentially the mathematical structure was there. And he learnt it from another friend who was a mathematician, and he started using these tensors, etc., and so shaped relativity.
So whatever you're doing in 21st century,
yeah,
generations will probably use it in the 22nd century, maybe, if possible?
I have no idea. But that is, I mean, what exact applications the mathematics might have a century later, I can't predict, right? But so therefore, the application is seldom a pure mathematician's motivation. Say, for example, I mean, somebody who writes literature, is the learning of grammar for applications going to be a motivation? No. But typically a piece of literature, a piece of poetry, it sort of captures and portrays, say, human feelings or certain human circumstance in a particular way which is common to many human beings, right? And therefore, so here the language we use is that of reason. The structure we produce is the music. So there is this French book called Les Mathématiques, Musique de Raison, the mathematics music of reason. So it's, I think the sort of mathematical aesthetics is intimately connected with how much of mathematical knowledge it unifies. That's what gives depth, beauty, to a piece of mathematics we do. Or, I mean, in general, I mean, what exactly do we regard as sort of fundamental in this human pursuit, common human pursuit of knowledge? It's something that sort of unifies a lot of knowledge together, right? Gives sort of one unified perspective on it. And I think that sort of somewhat abstract paradigm of this sort of universal quest for knowledge that human beings, I mean, it's one of the defining features of us, right, as a species. That is really what, in a very pure form, is what motivates the human mathematician.
What strikes somebody like me
Yeah.
is your saffron robe. What motivated you to become a monk with the monastic sect Ramakrishna Ashram?
Okay, so yeah, the twin ideals are, I mean, that the Ramakrishna Mission has. One is of service. The other is sort of contemplative, personal quest. So that seems, I mean, for me personally, it gels very well with the mathematics I do. I mean, the mathematical research is a sort of a personal quest for knowledge. And at the same time, one teaches and is of service to students and sort of makes sure that this knowledge is available to a larger group of people. Yeah? I mean, and then that knowledge, once it's sort of utilized properly, it gives a larger number of people a certain measure of power. So, I mean, it's not just mathematics. I mean, any scientific, serious scientific endeavor is of that way. I mean, you have this sort of serious scientific quest at its core, and then you make it available. There are sort of social structures that tap into this. One is research, that is this quest, and the other is teaching, sort of making it available. So, in that sense, it's not really, I mean, it's not that much of a contradiction.
So it's the meeting of the beautiful minds of a monk and a mathematician. Can one say it is that beautiful poetry and song which is happening?
No, I don't know. I mean, I haven't really thought much about this particular thing. I mean, in my personal life, I'm a monk. In my public life, I'm a mathematician. That's it. And I mean, for me personally, there is no contradiction because of this teaching research dichotomy. So I think, yeah, that's it. So I mean, it's just that, yeah, that's it. I don't see any sort of anything very much more to elaborate on that particular thing.
Being a monk, do you have a bank balance which is large, or what is the kind of money you have in your bank?
So I think right now I got some honorarium from Indian Statistical Institute a few months back. So whatever, I mean, that couple of months of honorarium, that's what I have in my balance there right now.
And this Infosys Science Award comes with a purse of 65 lakh rupees.
Yeah.
What do you plan to do with it if you don't have a bank balance and you have a frugal lifestyle?
So honestly, I don't plan to do anything about it. I'll tell you what, there are people who are much more dependable, they're much safer hands, who know what to do with it. So there's a trust we are trying to form. A couple of my very close theoretical physics friends, Shiraz Meenwala, Rajesh Gopakumar. Shiraz is here and Rajesh is the director of ICTS. And there are a couple of other people, I mean, who have worked extensively in the sort of service sector. Trilochan Shastri, who's at IIM Bangalore, and there's this young student of all of us, I mean, of all Rajesh, Shiraz and me, called Arnab Rudra, who is right now just submitting his thesis, PhD thesis at Cambridge. He has done a lot for primary education in some small villages. So both Trilochan and he would know what sort of outreaching in terms of primary education is, and I think the three of us, Shiraz, Rajesh, me, would have some idea about how to sort of tap students, promote excellence, and so it's this group of people. The expenditure will be, I mean, Arnab, the youngest fellow, is the treasurer. So it's not in our hands. The money is not going to be in my hands. Yeah.
One of the biggest icons for the Ramakrishna Mission was Swami Vivekananda.
That's right.
And the current Prime Minister Narendra Modi, is a great disciple of Swami Vivekananda.
Yeah.
Do you have any kind of message for Prime Minister Narendra Modi?
No, I think when the Ramakrishna Mission was set up, one of the cardinal points that Vivekananda had put is that it's supposed to be completely apolitical, and science is sort of extremely apolitical by nature. I mean, whether an extreme rightist or whether an extreme leftist is going to use your science is not in your hands, or somebody moderate in between. So, or what part of that spectrum? So yeah, I mean, both my vocation, personal vocation as a monk, and my profession as a mathematician, are completely apolitical. So yeah, I have nothing to say about people in So I have really nothing. I mean, there is no real overlap.
Do you have a message for the younger people who may want to become mathematicians or scientists?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I think somebody, the mathematician here at TFR, she had taken an interview long back, Sujata Ramadurai, and she had asked me something similar. I mean, and essentially, okay, I mean, it's something very exciting, and if kids have this abstract, I mean, if they are enamored by this, trying to understand abstract structure, which underlies a lot of the concrete structure we see around us, then it's, I mean, I don't know, very few endeavors are so satisfying, deeply satisfying. I mean, it sort of involves, it's not just formal symbol manipulation, it involves you at all levels of your personality in an essential way. And on the other hand, it's not something, so unless you really enjoy that process of discovering what sort of lies hidden, it's going to be difficult. So it's not a career choice that one would make because it's going to give you money or some such thing, or awards or other such stuff. These are sort of completely incidental. I mean, they're sort of, I mean, the very fact that now there's an interview, it's sort of detracting from the doing of maths, right? So what's really important is that one should enjoy doing it, and if one enjoys it, then mathematics as a subject is extremely kind. It sort of keeps giving you sort of tantalizing hints of, oh, you know, there's this structure hidden, why don't you investigate it? And then you go a little forward, and then it stops, and then a little forward. It's an ongoing quest. It's sort of, I think there is this sort of, there's a recent book called Mathematics Without Apologies by Michael Harris. So I read it, and so the author there, he sort of makes this counterpoint. He says there's a pathos in it, which means that every time we know, we are swamped by a much vaster unknown that we don't know. So it's sort of climbing up Mount Sisyphus. It's a never-ending climb. At the same time, there's a certain charisma to it, which means that we are sort of participating in this quest that has occupied the human mind for thousands of years. I mean, that literally, I mean, geometry sort of, if you think it started with Euclid, then it's 200 BC at least before that, and it's going on. And it's, I mean, the student in class 6 still learns Euclidean geometry. So it's, so it's part of this a quest. I mean, something that is a very essential part of the human endeavor. And the other thing is that if you discover something, a mathematical theorem, it's going to remain true today. It's going to remain true 100,000 years hence, right? I mean, so long as there's the logical structure of the human mind is there, it's going to be a theorem that's going to be true. So there is an anonymity involved, where the individual is sort of not important. What he does is sort of carries on, and it's a contribution to human knowledge. So if these sentiments sort of excite an individual, I mean, it's a great area to spend one's life in.
So this mathematician monk who's taken in by geometry is enjoying himself?
Of course, 1,000. I mean, absolutely. I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, if one doesn't get joy in something, then one would leave it, right? Yeah.
So that was Professor Mahan MJ, the most recent winner of the Infosys Science Award, a mathematician and a monk who says he's enjoying his work and wants to unfold many more truths which can remain valid through mathematical forms for thousands of years. With camera person Suhas in Mumbai, Pallav Bagla for NDTV.